Raynon here. Today is another build showcase and it's Nova Prime. So let us immediately start. Nova got a massive quality of life change and also massive buff. So let's talk about it. Starting with the shards I'm using two Ember shards, which both of them give me 25% cast speed, which is quite nice on her. And two Crimson shards, which gives me 10% duration. If I had another Crimson shard, that would be like 30%. Which is amazing on her. She really likes duration and you will see why. Now let's talk about the abilities first, what changed. So her first ability, let's start with the passive. So her passive used to be one of the most useless garbage passives in the game. What it did is when enemies knock you down, you release like a 300 base damage shockwave. That does no damage at all. You can only kill like level 2s to 5s and doesn't do any damage, it doesn't serve any purpose. And when we got in like Prime Shoot Fitted, it just makes that passive completely useless because nothing will knock you down. So they changed that, and we got, instead of this, enemies killed by slowed, and to slow them, use your ultimate ability, have a 15% chance to drop energy orbs, which is a phenomenal thing. You're always going to be proccing this, which is going to be affecting enemies, and you always have a chance to drop energy orbs when you kill them. And that makes Equilibrium a must-have now. It's just phenomenal synergy. Not only that, if you hold your ultimate ability, now it's no longer a slow buff, now it's also a speed buff. So you no longer need to build both slow build and speed build. You have both of them in one build. So when you press it, you release a slow AoE. And if you hold it, you release the fast AoE to make enemies faster. So if you make enemies faster, and you kill them, there's a 50% chance to drop health orbs, which synergize really well with Equilibrium and Arcane Blessing. So makes this passive phenomenal. The first ability, Null Star, got also changed. So the antimatter particles didn't change much, but you're still going to build for duration. So the more duration you build, the more these antimatter particles you have. And also they buffed the amount of damage reduction per particle from 8 to 12, which is a massive increase. So you need less particles to max out your damage reduction, which is amazing. It also scales with strength, so you can get the damage reduction much quicker. But in general, for me, I summon 32 particles and I only need 13 to max out my damage reduction. So I have already over the cap, and yeah, it's extremely good now. It's much better. Not only that, it also gives you damage reduction to your shields. It used to only apply to health. As you can read down there, it says particles reduce damage to Nova's health and shields. It used to be only health, so enemies shoot you once, break your shield, and then damage your health. Now it gives you another survivability by giving you 90% damage reduction to your shield. And that synergy really well with adaptation, which also gives you another 90% damage reduction to the damaging type. So your EHP just skyrockets, and you also have massive health economy, which synergies really well with Arcane Blessing, which synergies really well with Equilibrium. So you have sustain, massive EHP, survivability. It's just really good now. And instead of proccing slash, it procs blast. The damage really isn't good. The way blast kills is blast does 3% of your weapon damage, and this is an ability, so it does no damage at all. Even if you build it for a lot of strength, it just doesn't do any damage, and it's very slow. It's very good if you use the augment, which is called Null Star. This is pretty much you press it, you release your stars everywhere, and you do blast and heat damage. This can stack a lot of heat. The problem I have with this is much better on other Warframes because this is the subsume ability of Nova. So makes this kind of useless for using it on Nova. You can, but other Warframes are much better to build this around than Nova is. So overall changes to this, really good. Second ability sadly is nearly the same. The only thing that changed is from radiation damage to blast, and they gave it range scaling, which is nice. But the problem is it has a line of sight, and another problem I have with the second ability, for a lot of people who don't know, this really isn't a buff. because the base damage to her second ability, there you go, the Antimatter Drop, is, it has a cap to base damage, which is 25,000. So the damage absorption, which you can see down there, says 8x, has a limit how much damage you do. So the terms of DPS that you're going to do from the previous Antimatter Drop and this new one is identical, just because it has the cap base damage, which is 25,000. For people who don't understand, Visp third ability used to be infinite scaling, so you do a lot of burst damage, then you multiply it when you shoot enemies, which just does cap damage. And they nerfed it to have a capped base damage, which is 1,000,000, which heavily nerfed the ability, but still hits for like a truck. They I wish they kinda buffed this, making it also like Visp third ability, to have a cap to 1,000,000, and then the damage absorption system. Then the ability will be much better. But right now how it is, it's identical as radiation damage. It just, instead of showing you radiation 3 million, it will show you blast 3 million, for example. So nothing really changed. The only thing that changed is it scales with range now. It used to be only 15-meter range. Now it's scales with range, which is quite nice. But I still find it useless, mostly because instead of you pressing the button and shooting the orb, you can just shoot the enemies and kill them much quicker. You need to remember this has line of sight, and there's limited range and damage you can do. So your beam weapons and your AoE weapons will just clear much faster than you pressing this button and shooting the orb. And once it fully charges, then you press it, it goes, it explodes. So ability still isn't that good, and it isn't really efficient. It's fun to use, you can use it, but for this build, especially that I use with negative range, it's just useless. So I replace it with Nourish. Nourish is phenomenal, gives you viral damage. It lasts for 70 seconds, which is a ton, and also gives you the energy multiplier when you get energy pickups or something gives you energy over time. So Nourish is really good on her now. It was even before. I used to use Nourish before the changes. Just much better now, especially for it to last over a minute. Third ability, still the same. They just removed the duration. It's just they removed the duration. Now it lasts forever. It's 70-meter radius. It's still fine. I don't like having this ability of a massive range scaling because you sometimes teleport outside the map or glitch out or teleport into walls, which isn't really fun to me. So that's why 70-meter radius is pretty solid. You're going to be flying and spamming this and being much faster than just bullet jumping. So this is fine. It's got a minor buff, but whatever. This ultimate ability got maybe the biggest buff. Like I said, now it procs both slow and speed. So pressing it releases the slow one, holding it releases the speed one, which is amazing. You no longer need to build two builds to use Nova. You can just go in and have both, which is amazing. The blast damage really isn't really that impressive. It's still the same. It doesn't scale at all. Like I said, blast doesn't scale with abilities. It scales with weapons much better. This can chain react, but only enemies between 10 and 30. It falls off like around 40 level enemies, Ganir and Corpus. It doesn't scale. It's a massive shame. It isn't like acid shells with Siren for her to shoot Sobek and then creates a chain reaction, or Kullervo, for example. This is a really weak chain, so that's why I don't really focus on the ability strength on it and range, because it really isn't good. Funny thing about this ability, so the range of her ultimate, the longer it will like have much larger radius, scales with duration. So makes range scaling completely useless on this build entirely. In general, completely useless. You don't need range on this because you don't want to lose your damage reduction. You don't need range on the Nourish. You're just going to give yourself Nourish. You don't care about your team that much. You don't need a lot of range on this. Maybe a little. 70-meter radius, like I said, it's absolutely fine. And there is no really point of view building range for the ultimate. The only thing affects is the explosion when you kill enemies, which has only a 20% chance to proc. and it's just weak. So yeah, range is completely useless for this build entirely. So yeah, I think I explained the changes on her abilities. Now let's talk about the augments. The first ability augment, like I said, much better on other frames than her. Second ability augment, horrible. That's another reason why Nourish is there. Third ability augment sadly doesn't scale with what do you call it? Ability strength. So as you can see here, Wormhole allows allies to travel through. Wormhole gains a 50% bonus speed. The 50% bonus speed is so minor, and also it doesn't scale at all. So you cannot like boost it to be much higher, like 60 or 70 or 80 or 100. It's always 50. The only thing that changes is the how long does it last, and it doesn't affect bullet jumping, so it's kind of useless. And the ultimate got maybe the best one, which is molecular fission. What it does now, when you kill enemies, when they're affected by the slow or speed, you get one Null Star back. That it used to be that. Now it's another thing. When your first ability, the Null Star, travels and hits an enemy, it procs the slow from the ultimate ability. It's ridiculously powerful. So if you have an enemy who wasn't affected by ultimate and it's next to you, this will just fly to him and procs the ultimate debuff, which is the 75% slow and 200% vulnerable. It's a phenomenal augment now. It's better than ever. You add this survivability, which is 75, reduce action speed to enemies, Equilibrium for the health energy economy, Nourish for the energy economy, Archon Blessing for the health economy, Adaptation for survivability, another 90% survivability, which these two work together, which makes your EHP much higher. You have like knockback immunity, 2000 over 2000 maximum health, thanks to Arcane Blessing. You pretty much can just turn off your brain with this build and do all content that D gives us. She's useful in every game mode. She's very consistent. She doesn't have like AoE bursts, like she doesn't scale that much, but she helps other Warframes that have AoE bursts who constant DPSing, like Siren Mesa, for example. She's just really good to have in your team, especially with these changes. So yeah, massive duration to make your ultimate last longer and go further. The effect duration lasts for 82 seconds on enemies, which is really good. 70 seconds duration on Nourish, giving yourself viral and energy economy. First ability gives you 90% damage reduction, and you overcap it. I have 32 particles, and when enemies are nearby, they will proc the molecular fission, which will proc the ultimate. And yeah, it's extremely tanky, useful in every game mode, consistent. So yeah, that's my build, and I explained the abilities, what happened. So how does it work? I'm going to make enemies Steel Path, Orc and Belly Grip dudes, level 195, summon them in, get the Arcane Blessing stacks, get the first ability stacks. I have 2000 health. When you're near enemies, the balls will fly, affect them, as you can see there. I'll use my ultimate, slow them down. And yeah, you're extremely tanky. They can't even move. Nourish. Yeah, it's impossible to die now with her. Like, really, you need something to burst you down. They can't even shoot properly. This guy is having problem to reload the weapon. This guy is spazzing out. This guy is looking at the floor. They can't do anything. Like, it's extremely powerful as ever. The changes she got are pretty good. I just wish her second ability was better. So yeah, I hope this build helps. She's phenomenal now. The last thing I forgot to mention, and that's you don't need a lot of ability strength. Maybe I said this. You need only 150 to cap the slow and speed So 75% is the cap, and you only need 150. So having these two is more than enough. You don't need growing power. Like I said, you can use brief respite, and you can remove prime flow and replace it with the rolling guard and play it on those made up 9999 missions. You can do that. But if you don't give a shit about that, like me, this build can do all content and it's very efficient. So yeah, shut up. Jesus Christ. So yeah, that's my Nova Prime build. She's better than ever, really good, highly recommend if you like her and if you want to like her. So yeah, thank you everybody for watching. Leave a like, sub, and see you all next time. Thank you. Goodbye.